my name is Katie, and I'm here today to talk to you about 10 debut novels that I think you should read. I really enjoy reading debut novels. I love seeing what new authors have to add to various genres. I just think it's a way to keep reading fresh and exciting. And not all of them are hits. Sometimes it's just very generic and it's already been done before, but every once in a while you get something that just feels different or is just a new take on an old topic. And I have selected 10 books that I have read within the last year or so that I think fit that bill perfectly. None of these authors as yet have a second book that has been released. As far as I know, I did check and I haven't seen anything. One or two of them, the author has a sequel for them coming out this year, but they haven't been released yet. And then the other thing I tried to do was keep them all within the last year or so that I wasn't going too far back in time. I have quite a mix of genres here, so let's just dive in. I'll get my two YA choices out of the way first. First we have The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. This is an African-inspired fantasy novel, which, fabulous. If you are also sick and tired of European-inspired fantasy novels, give this one a go. In this world, girls are subjected to a purity test when they turn 16. What they are literally doing is cutting them to see if their blood runs red, which would indicate they are pure, or gold, which indicates impurity. Our main character, Dika, she is very concerned about this test, and it's almost like she knows she's going to be found impure, and she is terrified because the girls who are found to be impure are taken away. As she anticipated, or feared rather, she is found to be impure, and she ends up being saved by this mysterious woman who takes her away to become a part of this group of warriors. All of them are girls who have been found to be impure, and these girls who are impure seem to have skills that pure girls just don't have. It's like magic. This was a great discussion about society's obsession with female purity, and aside from that, it was just a really nice fantasy story. I look forward to seeing what this author does in the future. The next book here is Raybearer by Ifueko. The sequel to this, I think it's Redemptor, comes out in August. This is a book about Tarisai, I think I'm saying that right. She is raised kind of in isolation. Her mother is not around very much, and when she comes of age, she is sent away to this competition that the king or emperor or whatever he's called in this is holding for his son. The purpose of this competition is so the son can choose his Council of 11. Basically, they will be his support and his advisors when he becomes king or emperor. I can't even remember at this point. Doesn't matter. So Tarisai gets sent there. There's a lot of nefarious dealings, but again, this is African-inspired fantasy that actually feels African-inspired, and it's different. And I loved the competition aspect of it, and I just really enjoyed my time with this, and I fully intend to get the sequel when it comes out in August. Switching gears here into some adult reads. First off, we have Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. This book surprised me in so many ways. Contemporary fiction is not something that I read a whole lot of, and I was a little concerned because I was expecting this to be more romance heavy than it was, and I don't usually like romance. And there is a romance in it, but that's not actually the focus of it. So in this, we're following Grace Porter. She is the type of person who always has a plan, and she is just so goal-oriented. And she finally reaches the end of that plan, which was to get her PhD in astronomy. The problem is, once she has obtained her PhD, she goes for this job interview. It was what she was banking on because it has what she was bred to do by her advisors. And the interview goes terribly because Grace Porter is not only a woman in STEM, she is a queer woman of color in STEM. And that can be, these types of fields can be quite hostile to women in general, even more so if you are queer and a person of color. So this interview goes terribly, and she doesn't tell anybody because she's embarrassed. What she does, though, is her father and stepmother have given her this trip to Las Vegas to celebrate her getting her PhD. So she takes 2 of her closest friends and they go to Vegas. While she's there, she meets this girl, and they immediately fall for each other, and they get married that night in Vegas. They kind of just disappear without saying a word. However, the woman she marries leaves kind of a calling card, a way that Grace can find her if she wants to. So Grace does eventually reach out because Grace is floundering. She doesn't know what to do. Her life seems to be falling apart now that she's reached her goals and she doesn't know where to go from here. So she runs off to New York to go stay with the woman she married. And that is just the most heartwarming section because they are so cute together, and the people that her wife lives with are so funny, and they are just, it's like found family. And I really enjoyed this. I just felt it had a lot to say about being in your late 20s and still not knowing where your life is headed. And I can relate to that a lot because I am in my late 20s and I still don't know where my life is headed. Then we have The Girl with the Louding Voice by Daré. This takes place in Nigeria, I think? Yes, in Nigeria. Our main character, Dunny, is 14 years old when her father sells her into a marriage. There are already like 3 other wives. And Dunny is heartbroken because she loves school. She loves to learn. She tries very hard to speak good English. And that's the one thing I think that's going to be a hang-up for some people in this book, is that the way the book is written is how a Dunny speaks, which is decent English for somebody who doesn't live in a predominantly English-speaking area. However, that does improve as the book goes on and her English improves. So she gets sold into this marriage. She manages to escape into what she thinks is a better situation, but she more or less gets sold into slavery. So this woman that she knows from her town enlists her son to help Dunny. But the son is not exactly above board. What he does is he places these girls in positions as like housekeepers and things of that nature, but he pockets their paychecks. He tells them, you know, he's setting up a bank account for them, but they never see any of the money again, and that guy pretty much just disappears. So she's in this situation, and it's not great. The woman whose house she is working in is abusive, but she does meet a neighbor who is very well educated and very kind and helps Dunny find her place in the world. And I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful story. Next up, this one's a little controversial. My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I'm sure most people know the basic synopsis here. We are following I believe she's 15 years old, and her high school teacher starts a relationship with her. It is very much a story of grooming, but we're also following her as an adult, and she is struggling with her past. She's never been able to form good, solid relationships. She never managed to reach her full potential because she's so stuck in the past in this relationship when she was essentially a child. And it's just, it's a conversation that needs to be had. Yes, reading it is very unsettling because it's a difficult thing to read about. Reading about sexual abuse in teenagers isn't fun, but it's a story that I think a lot more girls go through than want to admit it. And so I think this could potentially be an outlet and a way for women who have had these experiences to just feel seen and feel heard and know that they're not alone. Okay, something a little bit brighter. Love and Color, Mythical Tales from Around the World, retold by Bolu, Babalola. I have such a hard time saying that. This was phenomenal. This is retellings of folklore and mythology, mostly based in with West African mythology, but you get a couple of like Greek mythology retellings in there as well. I just thought that the author did such a great job in developing these characters. Most of the time, the reason I don't get on with short stories is because I feel like there isn't any character development. But in each of these short stories, I felt like I got enough of the characters to be satisfied when it was over, but at the same time, I loved them all so much that I could have read a full-length novel on each and every one of them. The other thing that's interesting here is the end has 3 original stories by the author, and I thought all 3 of those were great as well. One of them is the story of her parents falling in love, which I thought was beautiful. Next we have a couple of sci-fi. The first one we'll talk about is one I've been shouting about from the rooftop since I've read it, and that is The First Sister by Linden A. Lewis. When it comes to diversity, this is beautifully done. It has diversity in a way that isn't checking boxes or trying to show you how diverse it is. It is simply, this is diversity that exists in this world, and this is what it is, and not necessarily worth remarking on, because this is normal. And I adored that. It is told from 3 perspectives. 2 are perspectives in the moment that we're following, and 1 is a recording of the individual telling the story of how they got to where they are now. So the first sister is the first perspective we're following, and she works for this order. It's like religious, but it's also the center of their politics. And she has this job. Her title is the First Sister. She's a comfort woman. So her job is to comfort the men so that they can go to war and fight and do what they need to do. So she's essentially supposed to absolve them of their sins, but she's also supposed to have sex with them if they want. Now, her position as the First Sister protects her from this a little bit because she is saved for the captain of the ship alone. The other thing here is that these women are deprived of their voices. They literally do something to them that takes away their voice. They are not allowed to write. The only thing they are allowed to do is sign to each other. They've also had their names taken away from them. So it's not a great situation. So we're kind of following the First Sister retaking herself. So that's one faction. The faction that they are fighting against is where we get our second perspective from. And his name is Leto. He is part of a team. They're called duelists. It's 2 people that they pair together in childhood, and they learn to fight with each other so that they are incredibly effective in the field because they know each other's moves and they can depend on each other all the time. So his partner is Hero, and Hero is the other perspective we're following. It's the perspective of the recording, the story being told. So that's kind of in the past a little bit from the other perspectives. Anyway, Leto's task is he is supposed to go kill Hero because Hero was tasked with doing something and they failed. Obviously, that's not going to be easy for Leto, and a lot of political machinations ensue. It's very intense, and I wasn't expecting this to be a book with plot twists, but oh my. The next sci-fi I want to talk about is The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. This I didn't love as much as The First Sister, just based on writing style and how the story was put together. But I think the author introduced so many good topics in an interesting way, and conceptually I think this book was brilliant. So I am extremely curious to see what more this author is going to do. This book is taking place in a world in which multiverse travel is possible. The caveat to this is that you can only travel to universes in which your doppelganger is dead. So our main character, Kara, she gets taken on to do this job because I think all her doppelgangers except for like 8 are dead. So in like 352 worlds, her doppelgangers are dead because she comes from a rather rough background. There is a cute almost romance in here. There is a lot of interesting conversation about sex workers and race and class. And I just think that this author is someone who has a lot of promise, and I think even if this book doesn't maybe interest you, I think she's one you should watch out for. Okay, next we're going to switch to a thriller. I think it's the only thriller I have on this list. The Push by Ashley Audrain. This has been talked about a lot, but I want to throw my 2 cents in. This is a book about women not being believed, particularly if they are mothers. The general consensus in society is that women should want to be mothers and should instinctually be good mothers and should not have a problem with their children ever. And this book kind of slaps all that in the face. Our main character, Blythe, comes from a long line of not good mothers, and of course she is nervous about having a child because of this. And then when Violet is born, and she doesn't feel attached to Violet at all, and she basically feels like Violet hates her, she is very dismayed. And then when she is struggling with things and tries to talk to her husband about it, he doesn't believe her, and he basically just accuses her of being a bad mother. They have a second child, and with this child, she feels that connection, and she understands what people are talking about when they say they have a baby and their heart is just full to bursting with love. Like, she gets it now. But her husband is still a little bitchy about the situation, because he's like, well, you didn't do that for Violet. Funny how Sam has such an active social life, but you never did that with Violet. And even though her husband's mother has tried to talk to him about it because she saw what Blythe was going through, he just ignores her. And he still just basically makes it seem to be her fault. And I thought this was just very powerful. It is a mother telling her story about what it's like to be considered not a good mother. And it scared me a little bit, I will admit that. But I think it's also a very worthwhile read. The final book I have on this list is a historical fiction, and that is Tsarina by Ellen Alpsten. This was so much fun to read. If you don't like gossipy historical fiction, this is probably not going to be for you. It very much feels a bit like you're watching a reality TV show or something, because we're following the story of Catherine the First of Russia. And she starts her life as a peasant girl and somehow manages to reach the ultimate position of power in Russia. And so as she's introduced to this world of wealth and privilege and power and all these things that are going on, and it's like a train wreck where, like, it's horrible, but you can't stop turning the pages. And I just really enjoyed it. As far as I can tell, the history, the basic facts seem to be correct. I don't know a ton about Russia, especially not in this time period, so I looked for people who do. And the general consensus seems to be that it's not half bad. So yes, I think if you are into historical fiction, then you should definitely check this one out. And those are my 10 debut novels that I think you should read. Let me know in the comments below if you've read these or if you want to read them. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope to see you soon. Bye.